And so what I started to do is every morning I started to wake up and I looked myself in the mirror and I said, manifest, you're wonderfully and fearfully made. You're made in the image and likeness of God. Everything has a purpose. And when I started to do those things, I started to build my self-esteem.
Right.
And so when people started looking at me and say, hey, look at your big nose, I say, I have a big nose because it's for a purpose. And when I started to do that, my music started to change. My life started to change.
Right.
And that's one thing I would say to people. Wake up and have a positive self-image and attitude about yourself, about your work,
Right.
and you will start to see everything around you start to change.
Yeah.
And that's what happened to me.
Wow. That is positive. It certainly is. Who is, describe your style of music for me and how you got into this kind of music.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. And my style of music is primarily rap, hip hop, and if you define that over the years, it's changed a little bit. You have, Lil Wayne starting to sing now and stuff like that. And so hip hop and rap has evolved in the last 10 years, and I have moved with that evolvement. And so when you talk about rap and hip hop and you describe Manifest, that's who I am. How I started in getting into music and rap was when I was a little boy. I remember watching Criss Cross, and I was really influenced by Criss Cross and the backwards clothes and all that. And I remember wanting to record so bad. I got my dad's answering machine, and I recorded one of Criss Cross beats on one side of the tape.
Wow.
And then I flipped the tape over, and then I recorded my vocals on the other side, and I created my first single, so to say. And from then, I just fell in love with music, and I started recording professionally, and I became who I am today.
Okay, I hope you kept that though for a souvenir for yourself.
No, I should have.
Yeah, at least to give you some inspiration.
Yeah.
Oh, this was my first mixtape.
Right. I would say that my music,
or secular.
My music is positive based. It's faith based.
Okay.
I am a Christian.
Yes.
But not all of my songs are, so to say, geared towards a Christian audience.
Okay.
It's geared towards living a positive lifestyle. And for example, as a Christian, I feel that if there's anyone who's going to send a strong message about being a father to a son, it should be me. And so one of my songs on my newest project, it's called Good Old Man, and it talks about me being a good father to my son, and being a role model in society. And another song, it talks about loving my wife, why husbands should love their wives. And so not necessarily come out and say, Christian this and Christian that, but as a Christian, I feel that it's my duty to relay positive messages to all persons so that they could see the value in certain topics that I address.
So that's important to you. That's something that you strive to implement in all of your songs then?
Yes.
Okay. And you don't just perform. You're not just a writer. You're also a producer. You have your own studio.
Right.
Tell us a little about that.
Well, Donema Sounds is a record label I started in 2000. It's 11 years strong now.
Wow.
We've had many artists that came through, one of which includes B. She
Yes,
started off with us.
yes.
And another one is Mr. B's, and we have several artists that came through the label. I am the CEO. I am also a producer, and so it's a lot of work being an independent artist, having an independent label. But at the end of the day, it's worth it.
Right.
Worth seeing many persons' lives being impacted, and me doing my small part to curb our society in a positive way.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I imagine though, well, as you said, it's not the easiest thing to do what you're doing, and I imagine you've had to keep yourself quite inspired and motivated over the years.
Yes.
How did you manage to do something like that, and what would you say to other youth out there who may perhaps be interested in following by your example?
I would say don't give up. One of the things I struggled with, and a lot of people are going to laugh at this, and when I mention it, you guys are going to notice it. As a young kid, I struggled with having a big nose. You know what I mean? And
so did Michael Jackson.
and people would look at me and say, "Oh, look at your big nose," and I struggled with that for a long time, having self-esteem issues and all of that.
Right.
But you know what? I heard a message that said, everything was for a reason. Everything has a purpose.
Yes.
And so one day I realized, I said, you know what? What if I didn't have a big nose? I may not be able to breathe properly.
Mhm.
I may end up with asthma or some other thing. So
Right.
I started to thank God for my big nose. You know what I
Right.
mean? If you have a big nose or you got freckles over your face, thank God for that because you don't know the purpose for those things. And so what I
Right.
started to do is every morning I started to wake up and I looked myself in the mirror and I said, manifest, you are wonderfully and fearfully made. You are
Mhm.
made in the image and likeness of God. Everything has a purpose. And when I started to do those things, it started to build my self-esteem.
Right.
And so when people started looking at me and say, hey, look at your big nose, I say, I have a big nose because it's for a purpose.
Mhm.
And when I started to do that, my music started to change. My life started to change.
Right.
And that's one thing I would say to people. Wake up and have a positive self-image and attitude about yourself, about your work,
Right.
and you will start to see everything around you start to change. And
Yeah.
that's what happened to me.
Wow. That is positive. It certainly is.
Um,
All right.
When you start to categorize musicians, particularly me, I start to see that person start to put you in a box. Or he's a Junkanoo artist.
Yes.
He's a Christian artist. He's a this artist. I'm an artist.
Very true.
And so that's what I do. Artists create art.
Yes.
That's what I create art for everyone.
Yes. And
Yeah.
sometimes they create entirely new genres
Mhm.
and new styles altogether.
Yes.
Okay, so how did Manifest come about?
Well, I would say that, like I was saying, that the word manifest means to become, to make
Mhm.
things manifest, to make things become, and that's what I do in my music. My music is about life and situations that I face, and so I'm able to relate that in my music, um, and so that's in a sense that's how I came about. I evolved with the positivity, if that's a word, of myself,
Right.
in terms of not placing me in a box. He's a hip hop artist. This is what he does, but I try to create art in my music, just like a painter would get up and see a blank canvas, but
Mhm.
he had already created the painting in his mind,
Yes.
and that's how I am as an artist. I would wake up and I would look at my life, and I would already create pictures of music and sounds and songs in my mind, and I guess that's how how I became who I am, not wanting to be placed in a box,
Yes.
wanting to be everything that a person says about me. I want to do the opposite,
Okay.
and so I guess in a sense, that's how you could explain me in a sense. But then again, when you start to explain me, I'm already 10 steps beyond that.
Right.
And curving the situation.
Being
And so,
something different.
Yeah, being something
Yes.
different.